Rip, rip, woodchip, turn it into paper, throw it in the bin, no news today. Nightmare dreaming, can't you hear the screaming? Chainsaw, eyesore, more decay. Remember the axemen knew their timber, cared about the way they brought it down. Cross-cut, blackbutt, tallowood and cedar, build another bungalow, pioneer town. I am the bush and I am koala. We are one, go hand in hand. I am the bush like Banjo and Henry. It's in my blood, gonna make a stand. Chapter 18. It's in my blood, gonna make a stand. An old bloke once said, every Aussie should live at least 400 years just to get a rough look at the place. True. My kinship with our nature was developing when I was a wheat farmer, saving special trees on the farm instead of clearing everything. However, my real obsession with Australian natural heritage was only just beginning. The greatest thing about touring Australia with my music has been to further my fascination with the bush. I've said it before, and this won't be the last time I say it, but I believe the Australian bush in its original state is the most valuable asset we have left. I have the privilege of owning a nice chunk of it in the Queensland hinterland. There are 40 acres of grass, old dairy country, I regard as humanised, and therefore land that I can play with. The other larger area, although selectively logged before my time, I regard as sacred. I'm simply a guardian of it, to pass it on to others untouched. I rarely venture into it, even though there is a subtropical wonderland in there. Bangalow palm forest, a waterfall, ancient strangle figs can be found there. The original diversity of flora and fauna, I believe, is still there. It's certainly dense enough to become completely lost in it. Huge ancient trees you don't see until you're right upon them. An old vine that is thick as a horse, that you can sit on and sway slightly, walking stick palms and macrosamias, they're all there. Nasty stinging trees are waiting to catch the unwary, and even their dead leaves in the ground can give you a really painful welt. Some people are fatally allergic to them. A red cedar tree has been left in that forest because it wasn't tall and straight. If it was in an open paddock, I reckon it would shade half an acre. I'm still not familiar with this forest, so it scares me. It lures me to venture deeper, like a cliff edge. It's the kind of country in which that brave man, Bernard O'Reilly, found a crashed Stinson plane and saved 2 men in 1937. He knew north, south, east and west by the moss on trees. If I ventured deep into my forest, I'd have to leave pink tape on trees, like Hansel and Gretel's crumbs, to find my way back. It's all on a steep gradient to make you slip and slide if you're not careful. Good training ground for the Kokoda Trail. I get turned around in a city, so I'm not what you call a great bushman in this country. The demonstrations protesting about the logging of old-growth forests in Tasmania made me aware of the devastation that was going on down there. How could we sell off our ancient hardwood forests to the Japanese or any other nation just to make chipboard or paper? Most Australians were just sitting back and letting it happen. I was astounded. At least we should be making our own products out of it, I thought at the time. But then I realised the extent of the devastation nationally. Every state was flogging off our timber and turning old-growth forests into wood farms, leaving seed trees of just 1 or 2 species. The native diversity of every kind was being destroyed in our ranges. Back in the 70s, I realised that we might lose all the original bush in northwest New South Wales, and I'd already written a couple of songs with this message. It's a Way of Life protested about what the cotton industry was doing, and Trees Have Now Gone was about the clearing of trees for broadacre farming. So Rip Rip Woodchip was written as a protest song. The timber cutters couldn't believe it. John Williamson, an ex-farmer, country singer, on side with the Greenies. Farmers were supposed to be right-wing conservatives. In fact, they thought I was singing for the Greens Party, but politics had nothing to do with it. I'm a one-man band. The irony is that I was brought up in the bush as a farmer. I fell in love with the bush. Something was telling me when we were clearing the Brigalow, Blar and Wilga at Cropper Creek that we had to draw the line soon. Generations before me thought the bush was endless. The woodchippers even invited me to the forest around Eden in southeast New South Wales because they genuinely couldn't understand my position. I told them I understood their point of view, but they didn't see the big picture. The Australian bush was being destroyed wholesale all over the place. It wasn't just about New South Wales. I spoke to one contractor with his huge chainsaw, and I pointed out a 300-year-old eucalypt. "You wouldn't cut her down, would you?" I asked. "Bloody oath I would," he replied. I could see that to him it was just a piece of timber, not a home to many species of birds and animals. The timber industry showed me that they were using a checkerboard system, that is, clear-felling 50-acre blocks instead of flattening the lot, which was supposed to give wildlife a chance. But this did not convince me that it would help in the long run, especially as the only seed trees are left were a couple of species, which they favour for timber in the future. The forest would never be as diverse again. In fact, it would be harvested before hollows for habitat would be formed, so the checkerboard idea only slowed down the habitat destroying process. If someone can prove to me that I'm wrong, I'll listen. The Victorian woodchippers offered me a helicopter trip over Gippsland. They must have thought they would easily sway this farm boy. I turned down their offer. I'm sure they would have been very nice to me, but they had no idea how much I love our forests. Some years later, in the 90s, I was talking on Perth radio about my objection to woodchipping the Jarrah forests in Western Australia when a woman phoned in. She said she was the wife of a woodchipper and declared proudly that she cared for injured animals. She had a couple of baby possums in her care. She didn't seem to realise how many thousands of birds and animals would have perished as a result of her husband's chainsaw. They were clear felling over there. It's like bulldozing Melbourne and expecting all the people to fit into Sydney. I was left speechless by her remarks. But no matter how much the woodchip industry tried to group me with green movement, it didn't really stick. I was and still am an individual with my own beliefs. I refuse to become a member of any political party. I believe in the power of one. That has become my strength. No one can say I'm speaking for someone else or for an organisation. Sure, I'm influenced by what I see, but as an ex-farmer I can see both sides of the argument. However, it's hard to look at a third-generation timber family in the eye and suggest to them that their business is killing off the last of an endangered species in the world. They really don't want to understand. They are bound to get angry. In fact, ironically, an old logger from Western Australia was so disgusted by Rip Rip Woodchip that he returned my first album to me in the mail. I was delighted because my only copy of it had been borrowed permanently. One incident caused by the release of the song was a bomb threat in Taree on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. I was booked to sing in the high school hall. When we received the threat, we thought we'd better notify the police. We didn't have to cancel the show in the end, but the high school was thoroughly searched, and I had many policemen and women standing side of stage enjoying my performance. It turned out to be a threat by some poor disturbed fellow. I could have turned it into some good publicity for the cause, but I felt all along that it had to be a hoax. I wasn't out to denigrate the timber workers, just the Japanese companies that were tearing our old-growth habitat down. We were selling off our nature to profit another country. The Japanese must have been laughing. It was over the Tarkine wilderness protests in Tasmania in 1995 that I got to know Bob Brown, who later founded the Australian Greens. I'd met him before, but this time spent some time together. Bob showed me a huge scar in the Tasmanian forest where it had been clear-felled. All over the ground were cubes of carrot dusted with 1080 poison. The vegetarian wildlife would eat the carrot, return to their homes and die a very slow and painful death. This practice was to stop them eating the young leaves on the regrowth for the timber industry, but the native animal population was being decimated. A friendship with Bob Brown has not won me friends in the bush, but I think he's one of the finest Australians. He's probably the only true greenie that I know. He genuinely feels for the earth. When I was inducted into the ARIA, Australian Recording Industry of Australia, Hall of Fame in 2010, I made it known that it was an honour to have Bob present my award. I'm utterly convinced that without the green movement, most of our future forests would have just 2 or 3 timber species, and they would be no more than 80 years old before being logged. Forestry departments convert old-growth forests into tree farms. In the long run, has my song been useful for the cause? Well, for one thing, I think I showed that you didn't have to be a hippie or a rabid greenie to stand up for our habitat. I'm known as an ex-farmer, and farmers all over Australia knew that when Rip Rip was released. There's an area of original bush near Nyngan in the centre of New South Wales named after the bushranger Ben Hall. I joined the cause there to fight for its survival. The most effective ally we had was a bulldozer driver whose job it was to clear the forest for planting North American pine trees. One morning, he told us, he drove up to find gliders, possums and koalas clinging to his big yellow machine. This was just too much for the driver. He became a conservationist. He was no greenie. The Ben Hall stand of Aussie bush still remains. Too many people still take our bush and wildlife for granted. They have no idea how much we've lost. Yet I imagine most Aussies are proud of our kangaroos, emus and koalas and other native wildlife. I look out the window at Springbrook and see on the ridge turpentine, stringy bark, brush box, blue gum, forest oak, bloodwood, tallowood, hoop pine. Different trees provide different things for our wildlife. I don't mind selective logging in forestry, but not in national parks. I love good timber. It's a joy, but we must keep all the species sustainable. Why? Because we are caretakers of the land for our future generations to enjoy. It's arrogant not to care or to think that if you own land, you should be able to do with it what you will. The old Christian adage that man shall have dominion over the earth is bullshit in my opinion. We are no longer ignorant of the damage we do and have done. I'll change the words in the Bible. What nature gives us, nature can also take away. If it's already farmed, then leave it in a better state than you found it. If it's still bush, it's probably too marginal to farm, so leave it be. There is no bush like ours anywhere in the world. Get to know it. Use the timber, but sustainably. Cut limbs for stock feed, but sustainably. Don't destroy it. Respect it. There's something deeply spiritual about it. Soak it up and listen to it. I can't live without it.